And while we understand the sin, like hamartia in Greek, is to miss the mark, transgression and iniquity have even more robust, I think, ideologies behind them. Transgression is like a revolt, and iniquity is literally to pervert. And the idea is that while you may start with sin, like in the book of James, it says when sin is full grown, it brings forth death. So sin can actually grow. And as it grows, you may have a person that, they have a problem with lying here and there. But when they give their life over to it, their affections over to it, their conscience gets seared, it becomes a transgression. They actually expand that. Now they have committed their life to that lifestyle choice. And the way that I look at it, once you go far enough in that, it actually embeds itself into the genetic code. And this is why I believe that. Because in the book of Deuteronomy, it says that God visits the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. It does not say the same thing of sin or transgression. So what happens is when a person goes deep enough into this thing, suddenly they gain the ability to pass that problem to their offspring genetically. So you'll follow a family bloodline and you'll be like, wow, the grandfather was an alcoholic, son's an alcoholic, his kid's an alcoholic, and it just follows the family tree. Same thing with, adultery. It'll be like, well, granddaddy was an adulterer, his son was an adulterer, now Junior is an adulterer. Like and what's happened is that when we talk about iniquity, the perversion, that is the DNA change that happens in response to sin's influence on the human vessel. And so it becomes a more complex challenge at that point, because when you're dealing with a person that's in bondage to certain spirits, not because of just a mistake that they made, but because of the iniquity in their bloodline, then it gets deeper, because now you're undoing actual genetic aspects of what's at work in them. And this actually gets into why you see the satanic cults doing what they do, because they work on the principle of iniquity. They understand that you compound iniquity from one generation to the next to get more power, more abilities in the spirit world, in the kingdom of darkness, all of that. So why else would they then turn around and put all of their children on these satanic ritual abuse calendars and schedules of absolute torture and demonization and rituals? Because they are compounding the iniquity in their generations from one generation to the next. It's a power play. So when we sit down with some of these people, because I sit down with the worst of the worst. I sit down with people that have defected the Illuminati. I sit down with people that have defected all kinds of very secret societies, satanic cults, covens. I've seen it at the deepest levels, and what it gets attached at a certain point becomes very difficult. It'll be like, well, I just, confessed that I did this sin and I renounce it. It's like, that's not going to work. We need to address things at a deeper level. So that's where I begin to get into well-informed deliverance. I'll give you another specific example, and then we'll just, I guess, go from there.
Keep going, yeah.
Is this okay?
This is amazing, yeah.
If you only have a few $100s to invest right now,
don't really understand, and I'm just going to blow this one up a little bit. Composite, different substances, you put them together.
Okay.
So let's say I take a plastic and a metal, and I go into a chem lab and I make a composite out of plastic and metal. It's like, well, they're different, but I composite them. So you have a lot of this in the spirit world. Uninformed deliverance ministry will assume that everything's a demon. They're going to sit in front of someone, anything that manifests, the eye twitches, the body moves, the shake, like that right there is a demon. And they're going to be like, get out in the name of Jesus. That's stupid. The reality is that there's a lot of things that go on in the spirit world. And this can even, we can even connect some of this to like the Nephilim agenda and pre-Adamic conversations, because I promise you we can go as deep as you want. But there are composites. And what happened is, let's say you have a person who has a piece of their soul that's been shattered as a result of trauma that they've been through. And that shattered piece of the soul has been taken by a demon and wrapped around them. Now, you wouldn't be able to see that looking at the person in the physical, but what manifests to the front under some circumstance may actually be a demonic entity wrapped in human fabric of soul essence. So what happens is you say, all right, demon of lust or whatever it is, get out in the name of Jesus. But that is actually wrapped in a piece of, and I can explain soul fragmentation in a second, a piece of soul that's actually belonging to the person. And because it belongs to the person, it's an anchor of humanity for the demonic that's sitting in this composite entity. So you could yell at that thing for 60 minutes. It's not going to leave. What I would do is I would have the angels, I'll just pray, Jesus, would you have your angels drop this thing in a box of living water? Why? Because water has an ionization property. You use positive, negative, just like you put a dish in a sink, it'll pull the dirt right off the pan. Well, living water has similar properties. And so when you use it in the spirit world, it'll pull the demonic and the humanity apart. And the person, when we do some of these processes, will actually see some kind of like nasty pig looking demon thing. And they'll see a 4-year-old come out in the box of living water. I'll remove the 4-year-old from that box of living water, and I'll send that nasty demon thing packing. A 60-minute deliverance has become 30 seconds in the name of Jesus. It's easy. But again, that's another, just one simple example of informed deliverance. There's a lot more going on in the spirit world. I think that deliverance ministry has not caught up to the level of complexity that is present. You know, if you go through my prayer books, you'll see we have deliverance for everything, from everything relating to principalities, to evil councils, to alien groups, to artificial intelligences. There's a lot going on in the spirit world at this time, and the church is about ready for a big upgrade. I'll tell you what.
Let's go. All right. I want people to, so he's talking about like, this is pretty advanced stuff, but I think people need to make the connection between this isn't just deliverance from things like I am just addicted to sleeping around, or like I start levitating. Self-reliance, pride, manipulation, these can be generational pastors as well. When you talk about soul fragmentation, when Lucifer was trading, was he trading, like you said, he's trading essence before he fell? Is this what you're talking about, or was that different?
So I'll say it like this. There are several passages that talk about, for instance, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lay down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Well, why would you need to restore the soul if the soul couldn't break? In Job, there is a passage talking about how the soul can be torn in pieces, rent like a lion would rend something. Like, you know, my soul is rent in pieces. In the book of Psalms, it also talks about the soul being torn in pieces. In 1 Thessalonians 5:23, may the God of all peace sanctify you completely, I pray. Right? So this is a request for the whole spirit, soul, and body to be preserved blameless. So if you have to pray for that, we have to understand there can be brokenness in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is absolutely an ability for the soul to be torn. And the way the soul tears is through trauma. And it's related heavily to dissociation. So I'll give you a quick example, and then we could build off of that. So let's say a person is, you know, about to go through a physical abuse, you know, so they're 5 and the abuser's coming in, they have the weapon of choice, and it's just like, okay, big belt. This is going to go on for a while. They're in a drunken stupor. I'm about to get abused. 5 years old, you can't get away, can't run, can't overpower. You can't talk your way out of it. So how do you get out of that situation? Well, you go away in your mind. You run down the hallway of your mind. And that's what children learn to do. So they'll be, mind goes away. Part of it's going to stay present. And so when a child uses dissociation to escape their abuse situation, what happens is after the abuse is over, the part of them that's being preserved from that abuse will come back to the front. But the part of them that got abused, that had to stay present for that, has to go somewhere. And usually it develops some degree of its own identity within the subconscious. This is a soul tear. Verbal abuse can achieve this according to the Bible. How long will you tear my soul in pieces with your words? And the reality is, when a person goes through different kinds of traumas, different kinds of situations that are very difficult for them to cope with, you're going to see the soul tear to different degrees. And so we put that on a continuum. At the soft end of a continuum of dissociation, you have daydreaming. On the far other end of that continuum, you're going to have dissociative identity disorder, where those soul fragments grow into full-blown alternate personality states that can come out and literally run the body as another person with another name and another identity. This is the basis of trauma-based mind control, which could take us into the MK Ultra direction if you want to go there. But what happens is, people go through all kinds of traumatic situations as they grow up. They go through different degrees of dissociation. What they don't realize is that is the soul being torn in different ways and circumstances. And some of that then gets piggybacked by the demonic, which can lead to what I was explaining as composites.